Hello, I'm Rebecca Flaherty, and today we're continuing our beginner series and working on this cute and cozy ghost pattern here. If you're a regular here and you've already seen the introduction to this series, feel free to use the timestamps to skip to the beginning of the tutorial, and if you're new here, then welcome to the Pattern Maker's Toolkit. You can get the free motif stamp brushes to make this pattern and all the others in the series over on my website, as well as the colour palette. And we're going to be using a pattern maker canvas from my Etsy store to make patterns in Procreate using the diamond method. It's super easy, super fun. It's going to speed up your workflow because sketching out and finalising the layout of the pattern first before you draw any motifs means that when you come to illustrate motifs later, you're only drawing the exact ones you need and you can draw them to fit their exact spot in the pattern. Traditionally, we tend to work the other way around when designing patterns, where we draw a bunch of motifs first and then try and piece them together like a jigsaw puzzle. But the problem with working that way in Procreate is that every time you rotate or scale a motif, the image quality deteriorates a little bit. So by doing it this way, you keep your image quality perfect, and you also get to preserve all the layers so you can always go back and easily make edits to the colours at a later date. It's also an especially good way to make patterns if you want to sell or license them, because you can export all these layers to something like Affinity Photo or Photoshop and be able to hand over fully editable layered patterns to your buyer. And that's the workflow I use for all the patterns I make for commercial use. So that is why I love using the diamond method for making patterns in Procreate, and why I first created these canvases for myself to speed up my design process with all the layers set up ready to go, including the texture overlays. So let's get started and I'll explain everything else as we go along. So let's go out into our gallery, and if we're bringing in a PSD document, we always want to bring it in from the gallery screen, not try and drag and drop because that will flatten layers. So we go to import and I'm going to bring in the brightly painted canvas. So I'm going to change the background colour first, and I'm going to use this, let's use this bluey colour here for this one. And I'm going to grab the ghost stamp brushes. So let's grab this one first. And you'll see this has got the diamond all set up ready to go, so we need to navigate to our layers, then our sketch folder, and then we start here on the draw here first layer, which is an empty layer above the diamond, and that's going to allow us to move our first few motifs around without getting it in the way of the diamond before we merge it down. So I'm just going to grab a pink colour for this, and I'm going to stamp my first ghost in there. The size of this one is 25%. I'm going to add another layer and put one of the other ghosts in there, and then add another layer and put this ghost in there. And then because this is our sketch layer, we can transform and scale and rotate these around and not worry about losing image quality because we'll be tracing over them later. So I'm just going to lay these out and get them in their position in the canvas where I want them to be. So let's start with this little guy at the top. I'll turn snapping and magnetic off and put him kind of up there. And then I think we'll bring this one over to here. And then put him kind of halfway along this edge there. Then I'm going to duplicate each one of these and put like a second version of it, flip around the other way. So we'll duplicate this bottom one here, tap up here on transform, and we'll flip it horizontally, and then we'll put him kind of there. And you'll find when you make patterns, having motifs repeated but sort of moved around slightly differently helps to make your pattern look more cohesive if you've got another instance of the same motif in the pattern somewhere. So let's duplicate this one. Flip him around the other way and maybe put him kind of there, and then let's duplicate this one and see if we can fit him down there. And that's probably enough in place for now. I'm going to merge these together and then merge them down with the sketch diamond. I'll hide the spare diamond for now, and then we're going to duplicate these around the outside and see where they lay and if we need to move them around a bit more and what we need to fill these spaces. So we'll duplicate this, tap transform, turn snapping and magnetics on, and we're going to drag this down into this corner here until we have those orange lines there, and that's how we know it's snapped into place properly. duplicate the bottom one again and repeat that, dragging it into all of the other corners. Each time check in that you've got the orange lines snapping there, and you can also check that these markers line up. So now I'm going to merge those top 4 layers together, tap on it and invert the colours on those. So as you can see, we need to sort out the spacing on this because these are too close together, but that's why we like this diamond method, because it allows us to see how the pattern's going to look in repeat, and we can move things around before we start drawing them. So come down to our sketch diamond layer, and I think we'll draw around this guy first. Maybe move him up a little bit, and then we can move this one up a little bit too. And I think this pink one should be moved up a little bit so it doesn't overlap with these, which should then give us room for something in there. So I'll add a layer, grab this little ghost, stamp him in there. But I think I'm going to make him face the other way. It feels too close to this one going the same way. I know that one's going the other way, but I think because it's so close to this one, and also because this one is kind of leaning that way, I think, oops, not vertical, horizontal. I think if we put that one there, and then I think we need another one down here. So we'll add a layer and we'll put one of these down there. And we can rotate this one a little bit so it's not mirroring this one too much. So then we can merge all of our pink layers together, and we'll get rid of the green layer because these don't match up with what's in the middle now. So we can delete that one, and then we reduplicate this around the edges. Actually, before I do that, I can move this one a little bit because I already feel like that's not quite spaced out. So let's duplicate this one, turn snapping and magnetics back on, and then snap this into those corners again. Invert the colours on this top one, and then as you can see there, we need to adjust the position on this one. We could either move this one up or move that one down. I think probably doing both is a good idea. So let's, on the pink layer, draw around this one, turn snapping off, and just move that up and over that way. I think probably that's fine actually. We'll just do that one. And then to save having to redo this on all of that, we'll duplicate this pink layer, snap it up there, duplicate it again and snap it into this corner, pinch those together, and then on this green one I'll just grab the eraser and we'll just rub that one out and rub that one out, and then that means we don't need to snap that one up. So we can invert the colours on this bottom one and pinch those two together. So then we've got our pink ones underneath, which we'll be drawing, and these green ones on top, which will be made by duplicating. So I'm going to add some flowers now onto the pink layer. So go up to the top here and we'll use this same flower, because I think all these patterns in this series are going to have the common thread of the flowers weaving through them so that they all kind of go together and match. So we'll put some flowers in these gaps. We don't need to do any down there because they will be the same ones as we use up there. And so we can just duplicate this and repeat the snapping it into the corners just to make sure that the flowers look even. As you can see, I have a thing for ghost and flower patterns. This is one I made last year. And we can invert the colours on that, and I think we'll just add the faces to the ghosts now, and then this is ready to trace over. So one last job is to grab the faces brush, and I'm going to add a layer above the ghosts. There we go. And then I'm just going to duplicate this, turn snapping off, and then repeat that for the other ghosts. We can merge all those down into one. And now our pattern is ready to trace over. So I'm going to collapse down the sketch folder, turn on the pattern group, and on this layer here I'm going to draw the outline for the ghosts. Just turn the opacity down on this one a bit. And I might turn the opacity down on this as well actually. So on this empty layer here I'm going to use my tracing crayon and I'm just going to draw over the ghosts on this one. And the reason I like to use the stamp motifs just in the sketch layer, and the reason I don't use them for the final pattern, is because I don't want to transform and rotate images that I'm going to use in my final pattern, but also because I don't stick too closely to the outline. Every motif in this pattern is going to be slightly different, so this one won't be the same as this one here, just flipped around. It will also look slightly different because it has that hand-drawn outline to it. And then I'm going to draw all the ghost outlines on the same layer. If I want to come back and change the colours, it would be easy to alpha lock the outlines and just change each one by scribbling over them. So normally my rule is each colour goes on a separate layer, but if you're pressed for layers, as long as your colour isn't touching anything else, it's easy enough to recolour stuff by alpha locking and scribbling over stuff. So then we can set this layer as a reference layer, add a layer underneath, and we can fill the ghosts in on a separate layer underneath, and then we keep the two layers separate, meaning we can easily come and change the colours later. So on this empty layer underneath, with this as the reference layer, we can then go and fill all these shapes. And then you'll see if we hide this one on top, we've got this white on a layer underneath and the line work on top separately. I'm going to drag the sketch above the pattern folder now so that we can still see what's what, and I'll change this blend mode to linear burn and bring down the opacity. Got to do our flowers next, so they can be on a layer above, and we'll just draw these in. I think I'll leave the outlines off these ones and just make them solid. So then to fill these, we need to turn the reference off this layer, make sure we're on this layer, and then we can fill these just as we normally would. And then I'm going to add a layer underneath these and draw the daisy petals in white. And then we're going to fill these using colour drop. So then we just have to draw the faces in, so anywhere above this layer you can add a layer. We can use the brown and my tracing crayon, and I'm just going to trace over these faces. And the reason that I prefer to trace over them rather than just using the stamp is so that the line detail, like the texture on this brush, matches up with all the other parts of the illustration, whereas this one, if I turn the sketch up, is a lot smoother. I want to have all of the pattern kind of match up, so I'm going to just retrace these, and also you get to keep the better image quality as well with that too. So I'm just going to go around tracing over all of these. So to get this perfect circle, you hold, tap, and then it'll snap to a perfect circle. So hold, tap, and then you snap to the circle like that. Then we can fill all of these in with colour drop. Then add a layer above, and with the mini dot brush, we can add these little circle details in. So I'll do the small ones first, and then go back round and do all the bigger ones. Then we'll add another layer and use this pink for the cheeks. Same mini dot brush and just make it slightly bigger. And give them some cute little cheeks. And then that is all of our illustrating done, and now we're ready to put the pattern together. So I'm going to hide this pattern marker, and if you have enough layers spare, you can duplicate this whole group and flatten it like that. If you find that you don't have enough layers free to be able to do that, turn off your background texture, turn off the background color, turn off the overlay textures, and turn off the sketch folder so that you just have this showing. Then swipe down with 3 fingers and copy all. Come up to the top here of your layers and swipe down again and tap paste, and then you'll have that same flattened copy of everything in there. So you can turn your layers off now, and we'll turn the background color back on. We'll turn the textures back on in a minute. On this layer here, we need to add some marks in the corners so that we can grab this and move it around like we were when we were duplicating our sketch round. Those layers had the diamond on them, which was what allowed us to move the whole canvas around, whereas this layer, we can't grab the whole canvas. So if we put a mark going off opposite corners like this, and then tap to transform, we can grab the whole canvas and snap it around. So we'll duplicate this layer, tap, turn snapping and magnetics off, and then snap it down into this corner here, being really careful that you've got those orange lines intersecting there. Then duplicate again and snap that into each of the corners, each time being really careful, making sure that you've got those orange lines crossing over. Then you can pinch the top 4 together, erase those splodges in the middle, and then on the layer underneath, erase those back off there. Then we can merge those together and we can turn our textures back on now. There's the background textures and there's the overlay textures, and you can see that looks really cute now with the textures on, and that is our finished pattern tile, which would be ready to export as a JPEG or a PNG. Now I'm going to show you how to test this pattern in Repeat. So we're going to swipe down with 3 fingers and copy all. Come right up to the top here, swipe down again and tap paste. Then we can snap this up to the middle of the canvas there. You'll see orange lines and this will say 1800 pixels. Underneath I'm going to add a layer, we'll make it something dark and just tap fill. Then we'll duplicate this top one again and snap it over to this side here. And then what you want to do is zoom into the middle where these two meet and just make sure that there's no kind of gap down the middle there and that all the motifs are lining up properly. Then you can pinch those together, then duplicate this and snap that down to the bottom there. And again, zoom in, and where they meet, just pan along this edge to make sure that the motifs match up and that you don't have any kind of line going across there. You can pinch those together, we can delete that now. And that is our pattern in Repeat. I hope you've enjoyed watching this tutorial, and if you have a go at making this pattern and share it on Cara, then don't forget to tag me at Becky Flaherty so I can see it. You can find the Pattern Maker canvas, this one is from the Boho Bright set, over on my Etsy store, and the stamp brushes and palette are free over in the Pattern Makers Toolkit. If you're a Pattern Makers Toolkit member, you get 10% off everything in my Etsy store. The Pattern Makers Toolkit is kind of like a Patreon group, except it's free. You get access to all the resources in the Pattern Makers Toolkit on my website, including those I make for my Skillshare classes, early access to some of my YouTube tutorials and drawing prompts, discounts in my Etsy store, and one new freebie exclusively via email every month. And I only send out 1 email per month, I promise. If you want to see more pattern tutorials like this every week, then don't forget to subscribe here on YouTube. Have fun, stay creative, and I will see you next time.